You've tuned into Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes. Your access to success strategies and more to help you move onward and upward with your life. Listen in each week as she interviews others who have really taken their essence to the next level and truly unpaused their life. Now here's your host, Dr. Callie Estes.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Dr. Callie Estes, and I am founder of the Addictions Academy, the Addictions Coach, and Rehab Rescue. Welcome to Unpause Your Life. This is a great podcast where we showcase people who have done something extraordinary with their life. I welcome you, and I hope you enjoy all of our guests.
On my way, found a reason to wake up another day.
Before we get started, let's hear this short message from one of my supporters.
All the things that you won't do.
Did you know 81% of Americans would like to become a published author? Chances are you might be one of them. What's stopping you? Writing and publishing a book takes a lot of work and is expensive, right? Well, not anymore. For your next book project, or even your first, team up with Hassle-Free Books. They make it so easy to become an author. They remove all of the fuss and struggle and make it smooth and simple. And it's far more affordable than you could ever imagine. Go to hasslefreebooks.com and use promo code UNPAUSE to receive a 10% discount off of any book project. Get started right away and become a published author in as little as 45 days. For your free 1-hour book formula guide, which will show you just how painless it can be to become an author, head to hasslefreebooks.com today.
All right. Thanks again for joining me. Let's get started with today's show.
Took a walk down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of...
Welcome to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes of the Addictions Coach and the Addictions Academy. My guest today is Tim Ryan. He is the subject of the new A&E documentary, Dope Man, reaching millions. He's been featured thought leader in numerous national media, including USA Today, Newsweek, Chicago Tribune, and the Steve Harvey Show with Dr. Drew. He's been on dozens of nationally syndicated radio shows. He was an invited guest to the 2016 State of the Union address. He's the author of the best-selling book From Dope to Hope and the National Outreach Director for Transformations Drug and Alcohol Treatment Center. Welcome, Tim. How are you today?
I am blessed. Thank you for having me on as a guest. Truly an honor to be on your show because you're one of the people out there making a true difference.
Oh, I'm very glad to have you. I'm excited. Your A&E show is fantastic, and I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, it's funny. I was sitting with a reporter a couple weeks ago, and he was doing an article on me, and he said, "Did you ever think you would be doing the things you do today?" And I said, no, I mean, because literally 4 years ago today, I was still in prison, and I had went to prison. I had overdosed while driving, hit 2 cars, almost killed 4 people. By the grace of God, they were okay. And I was sentenced to 7 years in prison. And the way they ran the case, I did 13 and a half months, but I needed to go. But that's where I truly plugged into, for me, a 12-step based program. And that's all I did, 18 hours a day in the cell and in the day room. And my wife divorced me and lost her house. And I got out and turned my life around. And then on my 21-month sobriety date, my son died from an overdose, Nicholas. And Nick really instilled what I did, but never in a million years did I think I'd be doing the things I do. But this was God's calling for me. My former wife said it the best after Nick passed away, because when I met Shannon, Nick was 3 and I adopted him and we had 3 other kids. She said, "Tim, I truly believe God put Nick and I in your life for a reason. Had you go through all your struggles, had Nick go through his, for him to pass on and set the stage for what you're going to do next." And I'm just getting started.
It's so funny you mentioned that. I was just talking to somebody the other day. I don't know if you know Vance Johnson from the Broncos. I was just talking to him about that. And we were talking about how our past really set the stage for what we do. And when you're in your past, you're wondering, why am I here? Why am I being subjected to all of this nonsense? The drug addiction, for me, it was speed and food and lost my company and all this stuff. And when I'm in it, I'm not thinking about it. But fast forward, here we are. And that's what set the stage for us helping other people.
Absolutely. You know what I did yesterday? Yesterday was my 49th birthday, and I was invited down to 26 in California to Cook County Courthouse in Chicago, and I got to go sit in on a drug court and meet with the chief judge, and he wants to work with my foundation. But as we finished, I went up to the 5th floor, and court starts at 10. I got there at about 9:50. And I walked up to the bailiff. I said, is Judge Wattis here? And he said, yeah. He said, you look familiar. I said, I'm Tim Ryan. And I held up my book. He said, go on back, Mr. Ryan. And I knocked on his chamber doors and I walked in. And he said, well, hello, Tim. How are you, sir? And I said, good, Judge Wattis. How are you? He said, I'm doing well. And he said, what can I do for you? And I said, I just want to thank you for sending me to prison. I said, I don't think you realize, but you saved my life. And we joked around, and he actually remembered my case. He goes, yeah, you were the guy that tried to beat the case because they didn't have blood and urine. And when that paramedic said he had given you Narcan 3 or 4 times and had to inject it under your tongue, he said, that's why I gave you the 7 years. But I'm able to walk in and thank the man that at the time I thought was destroying my life. But in hindsight, that man helped save my life. And it's only because of the life of recovery I live today.
And that's fantastic. And now you're in the position to do what the judge did for you. You're able. Exactly. Yeah, you're able to pass it forward. And that's fantastic.
And that's all I do. And, people get what I do twisted. And the first thing I want to explain is outside of working for transformations, running my foundation, speaking all over the country, having a TV show, publishing a book, my recovery comes first and foremost. I still do 4 meetings a week. I still work with the sponsor. I sponsor at least one individual at a time. My job is what I do, but my recovery, and I see so many people get that twisted, and they get into advocacy or they get into the treatment space, and that starts becoming their recovery. I just got a call from a gentleman this morning that I had worked with at a treatment center a couple of years ago. He was a case manager, and he's back using. And I'm sending him to one of my facilities in South Carolina. And I asked him, I said, did you quit going to meetings? He said, yeah, I thought my job would keep me sober. And it won't.
Yeah.
So, for me, recovery gives me the opportunity to do all the things I do today.
Yeah, that's so important. People start getting into I don't want to say the hoopla of recovery, but like the rah-rah side of it, and you lose you. And you lose, your space. And for me, I'm not a meetings person. I got sober on a yoga mat. So for me, it's yoga and it's a gym. And I go every single day. And
let's not get that twisted. I run a support group on Thursday nights where I have family members come with the loved one struggling. And then I split it. But I tell the people, look, I don't care what you do to get sober, whether it's 12 steps, Christian-based, refuge recovery, smart recovery, celebrate recovery, seeing a therapist, going to the gym, doing yoga, but you need to change your thinking. And if you don't do that, you're dead in the water. So, and people think there's only one way to get sober. There's numerous ways.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I work with clients with everything. And I tell them you have to plug into something. And I don't really care, what it is. Something. Running, church, going to the beach. You just have to plug into something.
I absolutely agree.
So tell me about the A&E show. Tell me how you got involved in that and the purpose of it and everything like that.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. So probably 2.5 years ago, I got a call from a lady that used to be Oprah's head producer. And Oprah had packed up out of Chicago and moved to California. And this lady had her own production company. And they were doing a documentary in Chicago on the south side and the west side on the heroin trade, but why all the white people and middle class people in the suburbs were purchasing it. So they're interviewing me for this interview, and my 2 cell phones keep ringing. And they looked at me and they said, what the hell do you do? And I said, well, I get people into treatment. I do free interventions. I guide and direct people into sober homes. And they said, I think we could do something on you. So I signed a contract, worked with them. We put together a basic sizzle reel. And unfortunately, about a year later, the company went out of business. So I bought my rights to all the footage, bought myself out of the contract. And a friend of mine, Tiff, that was a freelance producer, said, hey, let's go to California. I've got a few meetings set up. So we flew out there, and our first meeting was with a gentleman by the name of Jason Harvey. And a lot of people might remember Jason from the TV show The Wonder Years. He played Fred Savage. Yeah, he played Fred Savage's older brother. And he owns a production company called Bischoff Harvey. Eric Bischoff, who was big in the wrestling world, WCW, with the Ted Turner Network, he ran that. So I met with Jason for about 2.5 hours, and we just talked. And he didn't sell me a bag of goods. I liked him. He liked me. I said, I'm going to sign with your company. Tiff was pissed off that we canceled the other meetings. We went through all the contracts. We tweaked the sizzle reel, and he set one meeting at A&E. So I actually was a guest at the State of the Union. After that, I took the train to Manhattan. I met Tiff and Jason, and we went and met with A&E. And it was about an 1.5-hour meeting, and we're down in the lobby. And you got to understand, I could care less about this. I just want to help people. So we're sitting there, and Jason goes, so what did you think of the meeting? I said, they were really nice people. I enjoyed it. And he said, Tim, I don't think you realize what just happened in there. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, the senior vice president was in the meeting for the whole 1.5 hours. She's usually in for 10 minutes. He said, you had the lady crying. She's hugging you. He said, I think we're on to something here. And 2 days later, they called and said, take them off the market, sign a deal. That took another 6 months. Last summer, we filmed for about 3 to 4 weeks. And then it took a while to get the pilot. So we basically ran the pilot, and now we're waiting to sign it into series, and it's just a little more negotiating. But basically what the docuseries is about, it's an unscripted reality-based show on a day in the life of what I do. And I told him, I said, look, if you want me to be showing people shooting up and all this, I said, that's not me. I said, I don't glorify that, but this will show you the crisis that people are in, the families. And if it goes to series, what I'd like to do is be able to follow people for 2 to 3 years at a time. Not just say, hey, Johnny Doe went to treatment, kumbaya, he's great. And I want to follow the families, because this affects the families so much. And I hopefully see them come together. But reality, you film with 10 people, 4 or 5 are going to die, 2 or 3 are going to end up in prison or active addiction, and 2 or 3 will stay sober.
It's so interesting when you get that call and you're like, you know, I could care less. If I have to go, just tell me where to go so I can help people. And I totally get that. For me, it's having to get dressed, and you'll find this funny. My PR person is also Dr. Drew's PR person. So she'll call me and she'll go, we have this event. I've got a red carpet event coming up November 7th with all these A-listers. And my only question was, do I have to get dressed for this? And she goes, Callie, this is huge. And I said, yeah, but like I have to wear a dress and stuff. And she's like, yes, you got to get dressed up. I'm like, well, it's not me. And she goes, for God's sake, just show up in something semi-professional. And I'm like, okay, because I'm the same way. I'm like, I don't, you know, all that fame and all that nonsense. I'm like, I'm doing it to reach people, to help people. And it's not about me anymore. It's about getting them out there.
You know, it's funny you mentioned Dr. Drew, because he's become a really good friend of mine. I did the Steve Harvey Show maybe 2 years ago, and Dr. Drew and I did an intervention with the kid on the show. And I was in the audience. They should have had me on stage. Hindsight's 2020, but this kid ended up walking off and leaving. So I chased him outside. I talked him into coming in, and then he met with Dr. Drew and I in the green room for about 2 hours. And the next day I got him on a plane and flew him down to treatment, and he's had some trials and tribulations, but I ended up becoming friends with him. He wrote part of the excerpt on my book. I keep in touch with him a lot. I've done a number of podcasts. I really like Dr. Drew because he's real. He doesn't candy coat stuff. We think a lot. We're on a lot of the same wavelengths.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome. I was on his show. We were debating 12-step because I'm so alternative. Like I'm, whatever works, works. And it was kind of interesting because everybody looks at him, like reality TV. He's his TV persona, but he's so knowledgeable on addiction and he's so knowledgeable on recovery. And we sat and just talked. It was really, really awesome to hear somebody that's actually educated on the subject.
Yeah.
Not opinionated.
No, and there's another gentleman out here I was with yesterday. His name's Dr. Lott, and he's an addictionologist, and he's just so calm, cool, and collective. And, I was totally against Suboxone and methadone. I was on them. They didn't work. Well, I don't know many people that support methadone, but, Dr. Lott really sat me down and he said, Tim, let me break it down to you this way. He really explained it. You know what? Some people need to be on that. And he really shifted my thinking. And who am I to tell someone what's recovery and what's not? So it gives me another avenue, at least for people locally, that I can guide to the best addictionologist I know, then one of the best therapists I know, and then they can do what they need to do. So I've got to be smart enough to say, I don't know it all, but that's why I surround myself with people like you, Dr. Drew, and people I can constantly learn from.
That's awesome. And that's what sets you apart from so many people in the industry, is that it really is based upon their opinion of what everyone else should do. A lot of times I hear, well, I got sober this way, so you have to get sober that way. And I always say, well, that's not necessarily accurate. Because I got sober, on a yoga mat in a yoga class. Does that mean it works for you? No, you may hate yoga, Right. So we have to be open and willing to guide the client where the client wants to go. And we also have to be smart enough to put our ego in our back pocket and say to the client, maybe I'm not the right person to guide you there. Our views are so different. Let me refer you, like you said, to this addictionologist or to the therapist.
Well, it's interesting. When I left my former job and I ended up joining Transformations, I get phone calls every week with treatment centers trying to hire me. And I mean, they're throwing huge money at me. And I explained to this guy calls me out of South Florida. He said, look, we want to talk to you. The owner wants to meet you. I said, are you trying to recruit me? He said, yeah. I said, look, I'm not interested. He said, whatever you're making now, we'll double it. And I said, you don't get it. I said, I don't care about the money. Well, yes, you do. And I said, look, I make a decent living, but what I care about is the clinical team and that there's different things. So that's why I went to Transformations, because they got a Christian base. They got a 12-step. They do a lot of holistic, but what they really have is good therapists and good trauma therapists, and they do EMDR. And I put my sister through the program, so I know it works. But guess what? Not everybody fits there. So I need to make sure I can refer them or guide them to the right resources. So I've got them all over the country. And a lot of people don't do that. They push someone to go somewhere because they work there, and that's not the right thing to do. And I made it very clear with Transformations, just because I get someone that can cash pay or has good insurance doesn't mean they're coming to us. They said, look, you do what you want, and it's been a good relationship. So
that's great. I actually trained some of their staff.
Yeah, offline, I want to talk to you because one of the people there said, I want to talk to you about doing some other things for us as well. So that's a good thing to do, and it's knowledge is power. And that's why I was so successful in the business world. And I'm the guy with the 1.4 grade average who got the 11 on his ACT and took it 4 times. And I'm the guy that at 49 years old can't tell you how to use there in a sentence, THERE. I don't comprehend it. But I am the guy that knows how to find the people I can surround myself, get as much knowledge from them. But I'm also the guy that can put my hand up and say, you know what, this is out of my league. Let me pull in a specialist and let them take it from here. And a lot of people just don't know how to multitask and juggle those things. And I think that's why I've made it so far so quickly, is because I know how to do that. I was a recruiter. I've interviewed 10,000 people. That's why with my interventions, I've done about 1,500. I've had 3 people not go to treatment. I just go in and I talk and I share and I break people down until we can find a common ground. And I wait for them to put their hand up and say, all right, I need some help. All right, let's go. Let's get you into treatment. Because people don't want to live in active addiction. They just don't know how to put their damn hand up and ask for help.
That's true. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So it's a good deal. My life does not suck. I'll tell you that.
That's awesome. Now tell me about your book, From Dope to Hope. What made you write it? What inspired you to put it out?
So actually, it started getting penned when I was sitting in a prison cell. I was in Sheridan Correctional Center outside of Chicago, west of Chicago, and it's a drug treatment program, but it's still a medium prison. So you lock down 18 hours a day. And I can remember the first 30 days they have you in one building. And I'm sitting in this green plastic chair, and it was like, it used to be the seg cell. So it's really small, and I'm looking at the paint peeling off the wall, and I'm like, how the hell did I get myself here again? Because a couple years prior, I was given a year in prison. I did 61 days and got out for driving on revokes. Of course, I was going to get heroin every time. And that's when I started writing. And I knew when I was in prison, I was done using. It was just a matter of what I was going to do. And I started penning the outline. And then actually 2 years ago yesterday, a gentleman by the name of Scott Carbonaro was brought into my life because his daughter died from an overdose in my hometown. And I was called in by my cop buddy to do an intervention with her friend that was with her. Scott had called me the next day and said, Tim, I know who you are. And he won't mind me saying this. I said, well, how do you know who I am? He said, because I was at the 12-step meeting the day your son died that you showed up at. He said, I'm also in recovery. So Scott and I became good friends. And it turned out he's a professional speaker. He's published 15 books. So him and his wife, Jocelyn, helped me put my book together. And it's real. It's raw. I don't candy coat anything, but I get a lot of parents that read it and say, now I see why my son, my daughter, my husband, my wife does what they do. You explained it so well. And I talk about, getting sober and my son dying and more trials and tribulations, but I never had to pick up. My one mistake is we self-published and we kicked it on Amazon and it was a bestseller right out of the gate. If I would have waited to go to a bigger publisher, it could have taken another year. And with this opiate epidemic, I wanted to get it out. We're starting to work on another one now. With my recovery, I needed to be an open book. And even with my son dying, when I do speaking events, I'll be the first to say that I helped kill my own son. And I have to live with that. Even though Nick died on my 21-month sobriety date, my son followed in my footsteps. Towards the end of prior to going to prison, my son and I did drugs together. And when I got out, my former wife and I were trying to help Nick, and he is in treatment again. And then he ultimately died. But I have to own that, and I have to live with it. And a lot of people don't talk about things like that. But I need to hopefully help one person from not making the bad decisions I made.
Yeah, that's tough. When you have something that big and that traumatic, it's tough to talk about. But it really does resonate with people.
It does. I was always called a mouth as a kid, and I have the gift of gab, and I've learned how to take this gift of gab and now go do school programs. And I'm not just sharing a story. I'm talking about bullying, about fitting in, about snitching and why you should snitch on a friend and how to ask for help. And then I'll have my 19-year-old son speak for about 10 minutes. And Max will get up there and say, look, I'm not a drug addict or alcoholic at all. I tried a little weed. I tried acid. I haven't done anything in over 2 years. But let me tell you what it was like to live with a father and brother that were in active addiction. And then my father goes to prison, and then my brother dies, and yada, yada. So Max hits all the kids that aren't addicts, but mom, dad, brother, sister are. And it's powerful, and it's working. But the crazy thing is, in my hometown in Naperville, Illinois, I haven't been in any of the schools. I speak all over the country, but they don't have a problem here. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane.
That's interesting you said that, because I do a lot of public speaking, and I hit up my high school, and they said absolutely not, because the high school that I went to, it's very similar. Everything's swished under the rug, where everyone around us is dying, but, we don't have that here. And I was shocked. It's 2017. It's not 1991 anymore. I mean,
It's crazy. I did a TED Talk last year in Naperville, a TEDx talk, and it was about exposing what's going on in our backyard and stop denying it, drop the stigma. We need more people in recovery coming out and talking about it. I mean, there's 23.5 million people clean and sober today, but they're all hiding in the rooms or this, and they're not talking about it. We need more people coming out, being proud to be clean and sober, but there's still that stigma. Well, I can't let people know I'm in recovery because I'm CEO of a company. Dude, you've been sober 8 years. Who cares?
Yeah.
But
and
that's just my 2 cents on it.
No, you're right. And we've gotten to the point where it's okay to say I'm bipolar. I'm
Right.
borderline. But God forbid you say I was a junkie. Like, that just blows my mind.
It's crazy. And it's just, I'm working with people younger and younger. 12 years old, 13 years old doing heroin. Not just
crazy.
Smoking a little weed. And the oldest is 78. And it's just baffling. And I'm starting to deal with more people that are just doing heroin. They never smoked weed. They never drank. They never did pain pills. But they thought heroin was the in thing to do. And you got 2 choices. If you're doing opiates, you will get sober. You're going to die. You might pass jail in the interim, but that's your 2 choices. End of discussion.
Yeah, you're right. And, it's interesting. My husband was heroin and cocaine. Those were his drugs of choice. So when he and I talk about things, sometimes I can't get through to the client because heroin was not my thing. I'm not a downers girl. I'm an upper. You give me something to fly, I'm in. So sometimes, I get that client that says, you just don't get it. And I'm like, you know what? You need to talk to my husband because he will get it. He got Narcan 3 separate times. He will tell you about it. My husband's been to prison. He got sober in prison. He's been there twice. We had one client that just was like off the rails. And my husband sat him down and he's like, you are on the path I was on. This is what's going to happen. And the kid didn't listen. He went to jail. He crashed the car. And finally, we sat the parents down. Like, you've got to cut this kid off. And the parents were just, no, 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 no. And finally, I looked at the dad and I'm like, your son's going to die. Like, you don't understand. This is not weed. This is not partying with the boys on the weekend for alcohol. This is serious. This kid's shooting up and driving a car. The dad just couldn't grasp that little Johnny, we'll call him, is doing that. And I said, I know, it's hard to understand your son is doing hardcore drugs, but at the same time, I need you to do the following things. And the dad just wouldn't do it and wouldn't do it. And finally the kid, and this is all public now, he drove his car the wrong way on a one-way and killed somebody. And he went to jail for manslaughter and vehicular homicide. And the dad called me and the dad's like, I can't believe you let this happen. And it was so interesting to me because I said to him, you've taken no responsibility at all for this kid's behavior. And the kid, I think, was 25 at the time. And I said, you did nothing we asked of you. You followed no protocol. And despite sitting across from somebody who said to you, I've died 3 times. My husband died once scoring heroin in the hood. And just by chance, somebody called 911. They could have just left him there. So you heard these stories, and yet in your mind, you said, I'm not going to cut off little Johnny. And I'd like you to tell our listeners, what do you do with those parents when they say, I'm not going to do this, despite hearing these stories?
What I tell the parents is if you baby an addict, you're going to bury them. And I can remember about 8 months ago at my Thursday night support group, I was running the family side, and there was about 80 parents there, and there was a new couple, and you come to my group, you're talking. Nobody hides in the back. I need to know why you're here. How can we help you? Learn from the other families. And this mom says, you got to quit picking on me. I need to assess you. And I said, ma'am, you're worried about the wrong blank. I said, what you need to assess is how fast you're going to get me into your house because your son's overdosed twice in his bedroom. Your son's going to die. And we left the meeting. I went to the house, met with the son. I had him on a plane the next morning. But it was like, I'll use my son, for instance. After I got out of prison, Nick was in treatment again. And then his grandmother would let him come to her house. And my 12-year-old daughter was there doing laundry. And she calls me up and says, Dad, you've got to get Nick out of grandma's. I found a big pile of heroin on the washing machine. And the analogy I use is, if my daughter was carrying her laundry down and happened to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and set it on that pile of heroin, threw her laundry in, ate that sandwich, it would have killed my daughter. But from Nick's standpoint, Grandma's like, well, I don't want him to die on the streets. No, he died in a $500,000 home, 5 miles away with his buddies because they let him die. But if he's got a hot shower, food, a bed, he can come and go as he pleases. There's no consequences. He has no reason to change. When I walk into a house, 2 things are going to happen. I'm going to be taking this person to treatment, or I will help them pack a bag, and I will take them to the homeless shelter. And I'll tell parents, you need to shut off their cell phone. Well, I need to know where they are. Well, you know where they are. They're on the west side of Chicago buying heroin, or they're out in Rockford living in a trap house. But you're also providing that communication for them to communicate with all their drug dealers and all the people they can scam. But it's getting parents, too, to get help. I'll see families come to my group. Kid or loved one will go to treatment, and the parents will quit coming around. They think they're cured. Then Johnny or Susie will come back from treatment, and then I'll get the phone call. They're using heroin again. And I'll sit down and say, well, what? Well, we knew we started smoking a little weed and drinking, and it's like, well, why are you minimizing this? Your child's a drug addict and alcoholic. Well, he wasn't doing heroin.
Yeah.
And they minimize. And it's like, why did you quit going to group? Well, we got busy and this. And even when I have loved ones come home from treatment, if a family's going to let them come home, you put a contract in place. They have a curfew. They have a job. They're in some type of recovery. There's random drug tests. They're going to pay rent. And if they fail one of these, they're out of the house because too many people enable and co-sign their BS.
You are so dead on with that. And I've got a story for you. I had to fire the mom. Like literally tell her, I can't work with you. Every time the kid would go to treatment, she would show up at treatment every day. Banana bread, cookies, candy, hanging out in the waiting room. That the treatment center said to her, we're going to trespass you at this point because you can't be here. And then she'd call me and go, I can't reach them. How do I know he's okay? It got so bad. She was so codependent, she would pull him out of treatment halfway through to get her needs met. And I sat her down and I said, you are going to kill your child. And nothing got through to her. And I said, ma'am, you're not listening to me. He has got to go to treatment and you have got to get some, help. And we had her a codependency therapist. I even sent her to a retreat for 30 days to get her work done. So she goes to the retreat where there's no phones. And she's sneaking phone calls. She's calling the treatment center collect. Like she was worse than her son. She was so addicted to him. And finally, he got out. She got out of the, her retreat and she took him out to dinner to celebrate. This poor kid calls me from the bathroom. And I said, what's going on? And he said, we're at dinner and mom ordered a bottle of wine to celebrate. He says, Callie, I can't have wine. Wine is my gateway to everything else. I have one glass of wine. I'm calling the dealer. So I said, put her on the phone. So she gets on the phone and I said, everything we've done, we've educated you on addiction. We've showed you what's going to happen. Why are you ordering wine? And she said, well, he can have one. And I said, he can have one. You just killed your son, basically. And she goes, oh, he'll be fine. Fast forward later, he's back in jail because he ended up stealing. And she called me and she goes, I need you to help me get him out. And I said, absolutely not. I'm going to leave him in jail. That's where he needs to be. And you need to get some help while he's in there because now you can't intervene.
I could go on and on. The heroin addict that comes home from treatment. And the first thing dad says is, you want to have a martini? No, Dad. Well, sure, you can have some drinks. You had a drug problem. And this guy's a high-end lawyer. And they're just so uneducated about this. And then the family, the kid's in jail, leave him, and mom comes up with $25,000 to bail him out, and he's dead 2 days later. I've learned you got to have tough skin to be in this game because I've had the families that my kid died, it's your fault. Well, how is it my fault? I put your kid into treatment, whatever your resources are, they chose to walk out and get high, and it's my fault? Or they came home from treatment and died 2 weeks later. The 12-step program didn't work. Well, did they go to meetings? Well, no, it didn't work for him. And, well, did he get a sponsor? No. But everybody wants to blame instead of their accountability. I mean, my own son, When he died a couple weeks later, I met with my former sister-in-law and brother-in-law, and I looked him straight in the eyes, and I said, do you blame me for Nick dying? They said, yes, it's all your fault. I said, really? Explain to me. Well, you let him smoke weed and party. And I said, yes, I did, and I own that. And you ultimately did drugs with him. I said, yes, I did, and I own that. And I said, let me ask you a question. When I was in prison and you knew Nick was struggling, what'd you do to help him? Well, he wouldn't talk to us. I said, when I got out of prison and Nick was in treatment, how many times did you go to visit him? Oh, you didn't. Now that Nick's dead, you want to blame me. I said, we're all to blame. You are, I am, everyone, because everybody in some way, shape, or form enabled it. You know, we co-signed his BS, and they didn't want to hear it, and I haven't talked to them since, and that's on them, not me.
That's so interesting you said that, because everybody's looking to blame somebody else. They don't want to do the work themselves. Going to visit him in treatment, going to visit him, you know, when he's down and out, they don't want to do that. They want to send him away, have whatever professional fix him, cure him, if you will, and bring him back so that they can continue doing whatever it is they want to do. And that's not addiction. That's not human behavior. That's not what we're dealing with.
No, and a lot of the families are sicker than the person struggling. I mean, they get addicted to their addicted child, and now Johnny's not going to treatment anymore, and the police aren't knocking at the door. They don't know what to do. It's awful. I don't know how the hell I ever thought I'd be in this space, but it's a very difficult space. But the thing that keeps me going are the people that say, thank you, I'm 30 days sober. Thank you, I'm 90 days sober. Thank you, I just purchased my first house. I'm 2.5 years sober, and I'm getting married. That's what it's all about. But, you know, a lot more people are going to die. We can blame treatment. It's like Illinois. I said, look, we can blame the state and this and that. I could sober somebody up with a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous if they truly want to get sober under lower whacker drive or through your yoga techniques or whatever. But until a person's willing to put up their hands and change, but we want instant gratification. I want it now. I'm 30 days sober. I want to be CEO of the company.
That is correct. Yep. I've been using drugs for 10 years, and now I've got 30 days clean. Why am I not CEO and $1 million moneymaker? Exactly.
Isn't it amazing? And people worry about the wrong stuff. That's all there is to it. And, you know, I looked at when I got out of prison. 3 weeks out, I took a train from my house to Chicago. I walked to the other train station. I took another train an hour, and I took a bus to work. I commuted 4.5 hours a day to go to work. I was back every night for a meeting, but I had to do it. I had bills to pay. I had child support to pay, but I was willing to go to any length, and everybody expects it to happen overnight. It's a journey. It's not a race, and people tend to forget. I bust my butt for what I have and what I've done. I try to stay as humble as I can, but everyone's journey is different.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's a build. And it's a slow build. And sometimes, you know, you take one step forward, you take 2 steps back, you pick it up, and you start all over again.
That's it. That's all you can do. But, you know, God, I could talk to you for hours.
So I wanted to thank you for coming on the show. And how can people reach you? How can they find you? Where can they find your book? Where can they contact you for help if they need help?
I live in a van down by the river. They can They can find me on the web at www.amirf.org. That's a Man in Recovery Foundation. Click on that. It'll take you to my 800 number. You can send me an email, tryan@amirf.org. My book is on Amazon. It's called From Dope to Hope, A Man in Recovery by Tim Ryan. And if you miss the docuseries, it's on Amazon Prime right now for $1.99. So you can go to Amazon Prime, type in Dope Man. The show will pop up. And if you're interested in having me come speak in your high schools, community forums, whatever, you can go to my website, booktimryan.com.
Awesome.
That's how you can reach me. Thank you so much for having me on. I truly, truly appreciate this. It's an honor to be a guest on your show.
I'm glad to have you. Tim Ryan, everybody. You can check him out. Check out his book and his show, and you can reach him if you need help or you're sick and suffering or you have a loved one that is sick and suffering. Again, this is Callie Estes at Unpause Your Life. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the show today. Head on over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and leave a comment or review of what you think. Or contact us at 1-800-706-0318. If you want to be on our show, feel free to email or call. And if you have a topic, feel free to email or call as well.
Thanks for listening to Unpause Your Life. For show notes and more, head on over to unpauseyourlife.com.
Big shout out to recoveryinnovators.com for help producing this show. Thank you guys.
I took a walk down the long road where they said that I shouldn't go. On my way found a reason to wake up another day. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. No need to escape in love with my pain. I may be awake, but I'm alive, still alive, and I won't be bound by your mistake. No, I won't be your enemy, trapped at the gate. Bring me to life, put me to death. Just give me something that's just not so hard to believe. To believe. To believe. I took a walk down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of flying. Now I'm so far from solid ground. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing